I've been absolutely loving all of your questions coming through on the channel, in the comment sections, on our live streams, but arguably the biggest and the most asked question that I get and have had all throughout my career so far is, when should I get tested, or when should I do my testing in the entire training cycle? There's no set one answer, so I'm going to go through today my recommendations of what athletes should consider, or even coaches of athletes should consider in terms of when they should do their testing, particularly when we're talking about things like VO2 max, ramp testing, the lot, for their endurance performance. Hey, welcome back to the channel. Nick here, talking science of endurance and everything sports science in general. Please make sure, if you are enjoying the content on this channel, or you're watching for the first time and you get plenty out of this video, hit the subscribe button, because about 57% of people who watch all of my videos and all of my content aren't subscribed to the channel. So let's continue to build a great community that we've got going on here by hitting that subscribe button. Share it with someone that you know or think might get something out of these videos or enjoy the content up here. And as always, leave all your questions in the comments. Love getting in touch with you guys and answering your questions directly, because often they lead to videos like this one. And as I said in the introduction, today's video is all about possibly the most asked question I've had over my time working in endurance performance specifically, and even more specific to that, working in a lab doing VO2 max testing and testing as my primary service, and the primary thing I do for athletes is the performance testing side of things. When should I test? Or the other side of that question is it a good time to do my testing? And so today I'm going to go through my sort of framework and the responses I give to athletes that helps them guide them into when they should be doing their performance testing, because it's a hard thing to do. We don't want to take away from any of the training and preparation we're doing for our key events. At the end of the day, as athletes, we don't train to then do a test. Some of you might, but we train to then perform in an event circumstance. We're not trying to just get better results in a lab. That's not what the purpose of it is. It's to understand where we're at currently, give a snapshot in time, give us a baseline, then look at, all right, how can we make some improvements on that are going to be meaningful from a performance perspective, whether that's a marathon, a triathlon, swimming, cycling, whatever it might be. How can we translate those findings from that moment in time into usable, practical training to then give us the result on the race day? So when I think about when is the best time to test, or when athletes ask, should I test now, or is it worthwhile testing now, or should I wait a bit, get a bit fitter and then come in and testing? I basically covered it there. It really comes down to testing gives us a snapshot in time. It doesn't matter where you test fundamentally in the entire training cycle, annual training plan, because all it is going to tell us is where are you at right now. If I'm going to test you today, where are you at currently based on all the training you've done up until this point? What has that led to? That now gives me a baseline to work from. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to establish what is the current benchmark or baseline. And then from that information, whether you're getting blood lactate data, whether you're getting VO2 data, whether you're doing a ramp test on Zwift, you're doing a 2K time trial running, whatever your method of testing is, it's telling you information about a specific point in time to then be able to use that information to improve your training for the next block and see if you can improve your performance after that. Now, the more, specific information or usable information you get, and that's why we go in terms of a lab. Ideally, we can get things like VO2 max. That is also going to allow us, in conjunction with blood lactate data, to understand what the top end of your zone 2 is, where your threshold is, or your functional threshold, whatever you want to call it, lactate threshold, FTP, they're all the same thing, where your VO2 max is, what are the strengths and weaknesses from that physiological data to then identify how we need to train. Do we need to be more VO2 focused? Do we need to be more FTP focused? Is it worthwhile going and getting really stuck into your traditional base type training, aerobic capacity? All of these things we can establish from the test, and that's going to help progress the training program. So from a very simplistic look, there's never a bad time to test in a training cycle, and you're never not fit enough to test. Because what we have to also consider is you have to leave the ego at the door when we're doing testing and go, this is where I am at now, and just be honest with ourselves, because that's all it is. The more honest you can be with, okay, maybe I'm not at my peak fitness, but going in and doing a test now is actually going to tell me more about how to get to my peak fitness, rather than if I do come in at the top of my game, I'm going to probably then get frustrated with I can't improve anymore on what my test was because I'm already at the top. You've kind of then wasted, well, what's the point of doing testing at all if you know how to get there without it, if that makes sense. I don't necessarily recommend that path because it's a lot more difficult to find how you need to get to that peak performance. Come in, leave the ego at the door, like I said, establish that baseline, then you know exactly where to go. You're not guessing and trying to make it up as you go and stumbling upon a peak performance. You're providing yourself the most direct pathway to get to ultimately where you want to be, and that's improving how you outperform on race day and event day, improving your physiology overall, whatever your goals might be. So there's never a bad time. In terms of more preferred times to do testing is the best way I can phrase it, is we then consider what does our training schedule look like? What is the annual plan? Where are our events? Obviously, COVID's thrown a bit of a curveball at us in terms of changing where our events are. if you've gone through a big base phase over the last little while, winter here in Melbourne, just coming out of it, you might have done a lot of base through COVID. Now's a really good time to test and reassess, because now you're probably going to start to move into maybe a change in your focus in the base. So you might be working now, instead of just long, slow, you're starting to bring back some high intensity or some dedicated high intensity. If you've maintained that, maybe you're starting to move into some race-specific preparation. I know in other parts of Australia, around the world, we're starting to see races come back. Maybe you're moving into that race-specific. Anytime we change a phase is really a perfect time to test, because now we can understand, all right, where am I at now? And then what are the exact intensities I need to use for my next block of training? If I'm going from base into another set of base phase, what are my long, slow intensities from a heart rate or pace perspective? Maybe power for our high intensity sessions. What do I need to be hitting to really improve that VO2 max? What is my 95 to 100% of VO2 max? Or if we're going race specific, where is my threshold? What is it as a percentage of VO2 max? What pace is it? What heart rate is it? All of these things are going to tell us and really clearly inform us the training intensities of what we need to do in the next phase of training. Tell us exactly what's going on. So changing, I guess, phases is a really good point to do it throughout the training cycle, and then also looking at, well, where are my key events? Testing immediately before a key event, like 2 weeks before you get into your taper, or the week of your event as part of your taper. I don't see too much info in that, because we can't change anything. There's no real benefit of going, well, unless you're specifically interested in, well, what pace might I be able to hold, and you're doing some predicting. We know the longer the endurance event, the more variables come in, so it's actually harder to predict anyway. But we can get a reasonable idea, but there's nothing we can do about it. If you don't get the result you're after in that test because maybe you're still a bit fatigued, what it does, it probably negatively affects your psychology leading to that race. Am I underdone? Did I not do enough? Or also, if you don't feel like you're at the level where you were expecting to be at, and you sort of find that out before race day, it's kind of like, well, I've only got a limited time and I'm not going to be able to change anything. So is it even worth doing the race in the first place? I much prefer doing it 8 weeks out, 9 weeks out, where we've still got time to be able to go, all right, are we on the right track or not? If we're not, how can we make some changes to make sure we get back to where we want it to be, or get as close as possible if we've missed the mark somewhere? Because that sometimes happens. We don't always get it 100% right in training. Every athlete knows that. Every coach knows that. It's not always going to go 100% perfectly. But how can we get back to the strategy we're looking at and where we want to be before we race, still giving us plenty of time? And that 8-9 weeks out is probably a change in phase anyway, between your base and maybe your race specific, or different parts of your race specific preparation, the more transition phase into pure race specific or build type preparation, whatever it might be for you. So changing those phases are good. Giving yourself a bit of time recovery after a race, and then once you're about to reset and start your progressions again, or start your training again after your big key event, that's also the perfect time. Right back at zero. Have we lost anything from doing a bit of recovery and maybe an off season, bit of detraining? Has that occurred? All these factors we can start to consider. They're the best times, but really it comes down to any time throughout the cycle is going to be good, because it's going to give us that snapshot of where am I at right now. It's not going to tell us where we're at in a couple of weeks. It's not going to tell us where we were a few weeks ago. It's going to tell us where are we today and how can we move forward from that point. So like I said, it's probably the question I get asked so much. It's super individual, and I'm happy to have the individual conversation with athletes. If you want to get in contact with me and we can talk about what might be a better strategy for you, your personal circumstances are going to play a big role in this. But for the most part, changing phases is a good point to start your testing. It's going to give you the most accurate information for that next period. But keep in mind, things change, and it's only a snapshot in time. It's only going to tell you where you are now. Use that information, use that opportunity to be better in the future. That is the best way to perceive testing in any form, whether you're doing field testing or whether you're coming into a lab setting and actually doing some more comprehensive testing. In all circumstances, that's the best way to identify when should you test in your training program. So hopefully got a bit out of the information today, because like I said, it's one of the most asked questions. I get it asked probably a couple of times a day, most weeks. When should I do my testing? Hopefully it gives you a bit more information. How do you determine when you should be doing your testing? Always happy to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. As I said right at the beginning, 57% of people who are watching these videos aren't subscribed. So make sure you are hitting the big red button down below. Share this with your friends who might be interested. Go check out Instagram as well. Send me a direct message if you do have further personal questions you would like answered here on the channel, or if you want to talk about your specific situation in terms of testing or performance. Get in contact with me via Instagram, down in the bottom corner here at NJ_sportscience. Go check that one out as well. I'm going to leave it there. That is it for today, and we'll see you in the next one.